disagree with this opinion? What evidence can you offer in support of your response? What purposes are served by the right to be tried by a jury of your peers? Evaluate the anti-federalist claim that judges unencumbered or unrestrained by juries have been found much better friends to government than to the people.
The right to a trial by jury has existed since Henry II of England created the assizes. Section 39 of the Magna Carta states that no man shall be convicted of a crime or deprived of property except by the lawful judgment of his peers or by the law of the land. Article 3, Section 2 of the Constitution and the Sixth Amendment both guarantee the right to a trial by an impartial jury.
Federalism is the system of government in which powers are shared between federal and state governments. The jury system reflects these ideals. Like federalism's system of checks and balances, a jury checks government power. The government may deprive an accused person of natural rights only if a jury is convinced that the defendant is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt.
Duncan v. Louisiana said, "A right to a jury trial is granted in order to prevent oppression by the government." Colonial juries often refused to convict those charged with violations of the Navigation Acts, which were thought unjust. In response, the Crown established separate courts without juries, inciting outrage that contributed to the American Revolution.
Those juries fought an oppressive government by nullifying unjust laws, a practice that has continued. During the Civil War era, Northern juries refused to convict people in violation of the Fugitive Slave Act. However, jury nullification can also impede justice, such as when racism in the South caused Southern juries to refuse to convict guilty white lynch mobs. In that example, juries failed to exercise civic virtue. Civic virtue means sacrificing one's personal interests for the common good. Jury duty is designed to promote civic virtue because citizens must give up their time to serve their community. Juries act as representatives of the community, injecting local values and applying the law based on the community's conscience and common sense. The careful deliberation of each case by 12 members of the community reduces chance of error, making the people more trusting of the justice system.
Populism is the idea that the general populace, not just the elite, should have the ability to participate in government. American juries originally did not fully reflect populist ideals. Only property-owning white men were allowed to serve on juries. Supreme Court decisions later made the juries more populist. In 1880, in Strotter v. West Virginia, the Supreme Court held that black men could not be excluded from the jury pool. It was not until 1975 in Taylor v. Louisiana that the court held that the same was true for women. By ensuring that juries will represent a fair cross-section of the community, the court made the jury more populist. Allowing citizens to learn about and participate in their government is an important property of juries.
The importance of jury trials as a vehicle for public participation in government is shown by the failure to indict the police officers responsible in the recent deaths of Michael Brown and Eric Gardner. The decision not to hold a fully adversarial public jury trial in each instance undermined the public's confidence in the reliability and responsiveness of the judicial system. In contrast, in the case of George Zimmerman's shooting of Trayvon Martin, the public jury trial that took place led to public consideration of the possible changes to the Stand Your Ground law, rather than a crisis of confidence in the justice system.
The anti-federalists claim that judges unrestrained by juries are better friends to the government than to the people. I agree. In 1670, Buchel's case affirmed that an independent jury prevents judges from abusing their power. Juries stand between the power of government and the rights of the accused.
I disagree with the anti-federalist claim. Inquisitorial systems are designed to find the truth instead of focusing on procedural fairness. Judges act as inquisitors and make the final verdict. This dedication to finding the truth prevents the judge from becoming a friend to the government. Though jury duty is mandatory, many attempt to evade it. Jury trials are rare. 97% or more of criminal cases are resolved through pleas, not jury trials, and judges, not juries, determine the sentence. Federal judges are appointed for life, giving them independence from the government. They have no need to favor the government because their jobs are guaranteed. Thank you. We are now ready for your questions.
All right, thank you very much. So my first question is, what criteria for a fair trial are set forth in the Sixth Amendment?
The Sixth Amendment sets forth the conditions that you will have a right to a speedy and public trial. The trial is to be in the district in which the crime was committed, and that it shall be done by a fair and impartial jury.
Jury being made up of a cross-section of the community.
You guys talked a little bit about the grand jury process in Missouri. Speak a little bit, in your opinion, about that process and its place in terms of somebody getting a fair trial. I mean, you started on a little bit, and then you talked about some other things, but I'd just like to hear what you have to say about the grand jury process as part of an accused's right to due process in a fair trial.
The grand jury is very important for the accused process because it requires that a prosecutor goes to a grand jury and gives them information and shows them the evidence of the trial in order to produce an indictment for them. And so because of this system, the state is the prosecutor is not the one charging directly with the crime. The grand jury has to approve and say that there's enough evidence to actually accuse this person of the crime.
However, I believe that there could be changes made to the grand jury system that would make it more fair. For example, to select an ordinary jury, potential jurors must go through a process of voir dire. And while it would be impossible to do a complete process of voir dire where the jurors are checked for bias, for example, if it's a drunk driving case, they'll make sure they don't have any close relatives that were killed by drunk drivers. While it would be impossible to do a full process of voir dire for every grand jury because they receive so many cases, doing something smaller but similar would be more effective in making sure that bias does not play a role in the indictments.
Many people today try to avoid jury service. What can or should be done to encourage and or require them to serve?
One thing that can be done is raising the pay for people who serve on the jury because they're taking time out of work. They're missing out how much they don't get paid as much as they would if they were normally working.
Education would also be a useful thing to bring into this type of thing, in which the public is not as educated in this type of situation and what it really means to serve as a jury and really be that participation in government. And if there was a way of informing the public like these types of competitions and like what we go through every day, I would be excited to serve on a jury, and I think if we had the same type of information, the populace might want to do that as well.
Okay, great. My next question is, the Declaration of Independence condemned George III and Parliament for, quote, depriving us in many cases the benefits of trial by jury. So is that accusation justified? Why or why not?
Well, it absolutely is. The Navigation Acts were a series of acts passed by the British Parliament, overseen by King George, which the colonists felt really harmed their economy. However, as we all know, the colonists did not have a representative in Parliament, so they had no say in it. As a result, colonial juries would often refuse to indict those, or excuse me, not indict, to charge those who were arrested in violation of the Navigation Acts, no matter how strong the evidence. As a result, the British government set up special courts which did not have a jury of colonists to decide guilt.
The important factor in that is that today, whereas 97% of cases do not end up with a jury trial, we still have that constitutional right, and everyone is guaranteed that right for criminal cases.
So you talked a little bit about an individual being able to waive a jury and try their case to a judge. Do you think the people or the state should be able to require that people have a jury trial rather than just trying their case to a judge?
Well, I think there are certain problems that can arise from having plea deals instead of a jury trial for every single person. It comes in the form of rather being penalized for reducing your trial to jury. Now, let's say that you are accused of a crime which could potentially give you 2 to 5 years in prison if you were to go through a trial. Now, you are presumed to be innocent, however, there's a good chance that you could go to this trial and receive this punishment. However, through the plea deal, they will give you 6 months, perhaps the chance of probation. It's a much lesser punishment. However, you're completely innocent of this crime. So it's a choice of, do I take the lesser guaranteed punishment, or do I risk it and end up with the full punishment? And this is a case of, in fact, being punished for exercising your constitutional right to a jury, which is one of the problems with plea deals.
One of the major problems with juries that is often cited is that because juries are not juries are more likely to be swayed by appeals to pathos. So in many cases, having a trial before a judge as opposed to a jury is beneficial to the defendant. However, in cases, criminal cases where there are victims involved, it does not do justice to the victim. But, however, a pedophile, for example, might not receive what he or his lawyers would consider to be a fair trial before, may I finish my thought?
Yes.
Before a jury of his peers, because nobody likes pedophiles.